Thank you, Arunya. It's a very difficult presentation to follow. She has set the standard very high. Today, my topic is personal wealth management with a touch of investing through a pandemic. As Arunya had mentioned, we have a very varied group of people who love numbers, who hate numbers. I don't know, some people are in between. So I'm going to cover it at a very top level and not go into technical jargon so that I don't put people to sleep. What is personal wealth management? It's basically a personal roadmap to your financial well-being. But if you get your finances messed up, everything nosedives, and there's a lot of social consequences to it. And if you don't manage your wealth well, you better really pray hard that your kids do really well in life so they can take care of you in your old age. Given marine life and ships have been in our mind due to the disaster on our coast, I want to use a boating analogy. Imagine we want to set a sail and cross the oceans. Before we decide on the type of boat that we should use, we should understand what are the winds and currents that we're going to face, what are the storms we are going to face, and how each different type of designs of boats will behave in different situations, and also how long the trip is going to take. That is when we can construct the boat. At present, all we know is that we have a boat, or we need a boat to go to our destination very fast or as quickly as possible, but also not capsizing on the way. The large boats are slow and steady, while the small ones, the speed is there, but there's a huge chance of capsizing. So we have a challenge at hand. Successful investment strategy must address both the same compromise on either. So basically, our investment choices are like our choice of the boat, which would give us the best return, at the same time, not make us lose our money, right? So there are a few things to consider, a few factors to consider. Firstly, it's risk appetite and risk tolerance. These are, again, technical jargon. So what I would like to say is it's the risk you're willing to take and also the risk you can bear. But you can't take risk blindly. You have to take into consideration your current economic situation requirements. Then objectives. When you come to objectives or goals, is what do you want to get out of this investment? Then types of investment. Come on, I'm sure most people here think the only investment are fixed deposits. Are you sure that's it? I don't think so, but I'll go through it in a bit. Then the age, not to, highlight people's age or anything, but based on the age, you have to decide what type of composition of investment assets you should take. I will go into detail about objectives, type of investment, and also your age and how that plays. Last but not least, tax implications. Oh yeah, so this is a big one because normally the return you take home after investing is after you pay taxes. So let's say you spend so much time, if you take so much time and effort and invest in some high risk asset to get a high return, but then you have to pay exorbitant amount of taxes, then what's the point? Is it worth your time and effort and taking that risk? Probably not. So you should know the tax implications on the different types of assets. As I said, I'll go in detail. Now we'll go into goals and objectives. Different people have different requirements. Some people plan for retirement. Some plan for early retirement. There are people who want to retire at 35, 40, good for them. But, that is there. Then they say, they need to manage their children's education, pay off their debt, or they want to accumulate money so they can have fun at retirement. So each of the objectives, though, have different priorities. Some are nice to have, and some are necessary, right? So these are things you have to take into account. You have to look at, because sometimes children's education is more important than maybe having an amazing holiday at retirement. So you need to, manage what are your objectives in life. And that will tell you how quickly do you need the money? How much money do you need? So this is a very critical step, because if you don't know your destination, I can't tell, or no one can tell you the best route to go. So to reach there, you kind of got to know what are your destinations and what type of investments to invest. This is a myth, which is kind of overlapping with what Isuri said. Paper money is safe. Is it that safe? No, because there is something called inflation. She touched on it. I'll just give you a quick story. You might have heard these stories where your grandparents say things like, or your parents say, I used to buy lunch for 10 cents. I'm like, great, I don't even know how 10 cents look anymore, right? So they bought a lunch for 10 cents now, which will cost now about 100 rupees. This is more from my grandparents' time, from mine. And then that same 100 rupees is not going to be able, you won't be able to use the same 100 rupees to buy the same lunch in 10 years' time. So this is what inflation is. The 10 cents can't buy lunch now, and the 100 rupees that you can buy now can't buy in 10 years' time. So because of that, if there are things like inflation, if there are things like hyperinflation, like what you would see in countries like Venezuela and Zimbabwe, your stack of money that is safe in a vault is suddenly worthless, probably less worth than a toilet paper, right? But even if you don't go that far, and if you see the inflation that you see in Sri Lanka, slowly but surely, the money's value will erode away. So what you have to do is try and invest and get a return so you reduce the erosion and keep up with inflation. So that myth is busted. Paper money isn't safe. Then coming to now see what are the types of investments that are available to you out there. We'll start with FIC investments, which is fixed assets, basically debt securities, currencies, and commodities. So the first one, everyone's favorite, fixed deposits. What is it? Just put some money in the account, lock it in, earn some interest. You're good to go. That's it. Nothing to think about, nothing to worry about. Then there is foreign currencies. Isuri again touched on this. You have to keep the money in strong, stable foreign currencies, not some kind of Iranian rial or any other unknown currencies that aren't very stable, but more strong, stable currencies. And again, in this part, we can't buy foreign currencies using Sri Lankan rupees unless it's for travel purposes and certain transactions for medical and education abroad. So my thing on this is if you earn it, keep it. If it's in foreign currency, keep it in a personal foreign currency account or a business foreign currency account. If it's abroad, you can keep it there based on the regulations. Then we come to fixed income funds. Generally, there are debentures and things that are listed in the Colombo Stock Exchange, but it's extremely illiquid. So you don't get exposure to sovereign bonds and other corporate bonds directly. So you can invest in fixed income funds, which are essentially unit trusts, where these trusts go and invest in these securities, debentures, sovereign debt, different debt securities, money market assets. And what you do is you buy a unit of that trust and you become a beneficiary of that trust. So you get, it's like buying a share in that unit trust. So through that, you can buy and get some exposure and get some return from these fixed assets. Then again, Isuri mentioned this again, commodities, the main one in Sri Lanka is gold. Gold is always considered a safe haven asset. And this is the only asset, or commodity is the only asset, which it's not just a paper, but it's a tangible thing you can touch. Prices are high for gold. Prices have been going up. But from what we can see, the rupee is depreciating against the dollar significantly, and maybe in the future, I can't predict the future per se, but most likely. So therefore, the gold prices are supposed to go up. Then moving on, equities. Equities are generally higher risk than fixed assets. You take higher risk, you get higher reward. That's generally how it goes with equities. The first type of equity is private company shares. That is investing in private companies that is not listed in the Colombo Stock Exchange or anything. For this is not for everyone. Really, take my word, it's not for everyone. You need to know what you're doing. You need to understand company valuations. You need to be able to see projection, cash flows, see value in the company and invest in it. Then you have buying and selling listed shares in the Colombo Stock Exchange. Basically, there are two ways to make money from investing in the Colombo Stock Exchange: buy low, sell high, basically increase in value of the shares. And the other is through dividends. So it depends on the type of assets you do. Some is capital appreciation and some are, constant dividend payouts. The next one is equity funds. This is similar to fixed income funds, but here the unit trust will invest in equities that are in the stock market, and then you buy a unit on the unit trust, and then you get some exposure to the equity. And these are generally managed by fund managers. Then there are other investments. People know this, cryptocurrencies, the new buzzword, Bitcoin, cryptocurrency, everyone wants to put their money in it. This is a very, very high risk strategy, not for the faint-hearted. And also there is an issue, there is not a lot of fundamentals and know-how about cryptocurrency. And I will tell you, this is what happened. Some people know it. Last month in May, one tweet from Elon Musk, and the prices just plummeted and almost wiped out 30% of your value. You can lose 30% of your investment with one tweet. We saw that last month. So it is a very volatile thing. You need to know what you're doing. But also there's another problem. You cannot invest in cryptocurrencies from the money you have in Sri Lanka. This is only for people who are either dual citizens or foreign citizens or people who have earned money abroad and have money outside Sri Lanka. They're the only ones who can invest. You cannot take money from Sri Lanka and invest. So that is something for people to know, but if you're brave enough to invest, all for you. Then insurance schemes. Isuri mentioned this a few times too, but I will just talk about it from an investment point of view. First is life insurance scheme. And this is not only for something where in the event of death, your family benefits. Not really. You can invest in life insurance schemes for 25 years and where you put small payments now and you get a lump sum in 25 years time. So generally, this is about doubling your asset, probably roughly doubling your investment from now to 25 years time, if you just look at it. It is a low risk investment, so you can, look into that. Other thing is, as the same thing that Isuri mentioned, is health insurance. You don't want to be hit with a big a big hospital bill. So if that happens, you might have to pull things out of your, investment strategy, investment portfolio, and things can go amiss. So you can't reach your goals. There is one more thing I just wanted to mention. It's not very popular in Sri Lanka, but I spoke to an insurance agent and he said that's possible, is loss of employment insurance, which is something you could get if you're getting a mortgage, because in the event you've got a mortgage, normally they give for death and disability. But if you can get a loss of employment, which is a very big possibility during COVID, if that happens, at least the insurance company will pay your mortgage and the roof over your head is safe. So that is something you can still speak to your insurance companies and see what is there. The last type of investments that I want to go is real estates and REITs, which are real estate investment trusts. Real estate, it's the classic buy the actual property and building and see some appreciation. While REITs is the real estate investment trust. It is similar to like the equity and fixed income funds that I spoke before, where that trust will go and buy properties with the money collected from investors, the pools, and buy properties. You buy a share in the trust, and then you kind of get into the property bandwagon. If you can't really afford to pay and buy a full property, you can get a share of it. So these are REITs. The laws have been passed and tax concessions have been given for REITs already, but it's still not listed in the Colombo Stock Exchange. There's nothing yet. The hope is in the next year, but your guess is as good as mine. When it comes, it comes. And when it comes, you can buy it just similar to buying any other share in the stock market. Not complicated. So similar to buying shares in the stock market. That is the types of investment. Then, as I was talking, there's risk associated with every type of investment. Some are low risk, some are high risk. And you know, if it's low risk, expected low return, high risk, high return, that's how it goes. Risk reward is like a balancing act. And the types of investment that I mentioned can fall anywhere in this riskometer, right? Anywhere in the middle of it. But for just the ease, I'm just bucketing it into low risk and high risk. So what are the low risk investments that I mentioned? Are generally the FIC assets that I mentioned, that is fixed deposit, debts, foreign currency investments, fixed income funds, and commodities. And then from the other investments, we have real estate and insurance schemes. Then what are the high risk ones? Generally, the different types of equity investments, REITs, cryptocurrencies, and derivatives. See, derivatives is not something I touched upon. I just added it here. It's basically an asset that derives its value from a different asset like equities. It's really complicated. It's not for people who don't understand the technical stuff. It is something that's probably going to be there in the future. There are some murmurs about it, but it's not in the Sri Lankan market yet. So when it comes, it's something, if people are interested, it's something for them to look into. Now that we've gone into the low risk and high risk assets, and what are low risk and which are high risk assets, you want to know what is the percentage of the money that you're investing that you want to invest in high risk and low risk. As a rule of thumb, if you're 65 years old, you invest 65% of your assets in low risk assets. And then 35%, which is 100 minus your age, in high risk assets. Unfortunately, this won't work if you're over the age of 100, but I'm assuming not many people here are over the age of 100, so we will stick to that. That's the rule of thumb there. And why is this? It's because when you're older, you need the money sooner. Your requirements are quicker. Therefore, you should, invest in safer assets, because if you invest in high risk assets and lose money, you have much, much less time to recover the money. So that, you still meet your goals. So low risk. So this is something that is there, but this is a general rule of thumb. I'm not saying it's specific to each and every one, because the requirements and objectives are different, so that the optimal asset allocation can vary. So that is something for people to understand. Then, what a beautiful poster or advertisement. If you see something like this, super fun way to burn 800 calories in, let's say, 30 minutes. So you're like, great, I can lose all the weight that I've gained in the last 10 years in the next month, and I will look like a supermodel. Is that really the case? I don't know. It just seems too good to be true. So if you take it at face value and you don't do your research, you may end up in a situation. What that actually meant is You know, pizza has 800 calories and you can burn it in 30 minutes if you're a terrible cook like me, right? So it's something, don't take it at face value because you can end up in a situation of an investment like this. So if it's too good to be true, it's probably too good to be true, right? So when you're investing, there are all these opportunities, but there's a lot of fraud, there's a lot of dishonest, not good investments. So here are some red flags to look out for when you're investing. And when people are giving you investment opportunities, there are a lot of pyramid schemes, there are a lot of fraudsters, things to keep in mind when you look at them. Aggressive sellers, when they are a very, very pushy salespeople, be cautious. Risk-free investment opportunities. There is nothing that is risk-free in life. So when people give you such guarantees, again, it's a warning. Same thing goes with promise of great wealth and guaranteed return. There's nothing guaranteed in life. That's the same thing. When they give that such big guarantees, you generally are to look up. Why is it? What is it, right? If there is such risk-free return and such great guarantees, all of us will invest and all of us will be millionaires or billionaires. But that's not the case. So beware. Next one is everyone is buying it. This is a very scary situation. Warren Buffett, one of the best investors in the world, says, when everyone gets excited, I'm cautious. When everyone's cautious, I'm excited. Right? There you go. So just don't blindly follow the herd. I'm sure given lockdown, but the main thing most people are doing is binge watching Netflix. If that's the case, check out this show, which is called Bad Boy Billionaires. This is about rogue Indian billionaires. And go and catch the episode, which is about the Sahara Group. It was a typical pyramid scheme where the poor of the poorest people put their life savings just because everyone was doing it. There you go. Be careful. What are the other red flags? Pressure to invest now. Why now? Why not tomorrow? Ask those things. Why is it? Things like that happen. Over the top pictures, sensational, presentations. Again, these are red flags to look at. Then other thing is when there are unsolicited pictures and trying to get your personal information, or when they say pay for an investment to a personal account or wire it abroad to an account abroad, these are red flags, doesn't seem right. Again, rule of thumb, too good to be true is something you have to look at. It's probably bad. It's the same thing. If something tastes so good, it's really bad for you when you eat it. So something like that. Keep that in mind when you think of investments. Then how to avoid these type of situations. There are fraudsters, there are things all around, but here are a few things for people to look at when they are investing. One thing, ask questions. Ask loads and loads of questions. If someone is bluffing or trying to trick you, they will trip somewhere. So keep asking questions. Research before investing. Ask a lot of people what's going on, and there is something known as Google. So Google it. See, do your research before investing. There is no reason to be in haste. Background checks. If possible, do background checks on the personnel who are promoting these investments. A good way is to look at LinkedIn. It's a professional site. Most of the investors or people who are promoting should be there. See which company are they saying is backing, see how many followers are there, what are people saying. Follow LinkedIn. It's probably a good way to do some background checks. I'm not the expert in it, but that's something that I would do. This is the most important. Don't invest if you don't understand. I repeat, don't invest if you don't understand. That's the biggest mistake people do, is investing without understanding. Then I just want to touch a little bit on emerging out of the pandemic. First and foremost, you have to survive the pandemic. So to survive, take care of your health. If you don't survive the pandemic, there's nothing to emerge out of, right? So this is the first and foremost. Then in a situation where the market is so uncertain, we have so many unknown things, we don't know what's going on. More than wealth accumulation, wealth preservation is important. You have to preserve your wealth, taking into account inflation, something that I have mentioned, something that Isuri has mentioned. And then to say, taking a bit more high risk strategies, which can help you accumulate your wealth, because given the uncertainties, there can be a bigger chance of adverse moves, bad outcomes, a lot bigger, because a lot of uncertainties, this is not something a lot of models can project. You don't know where it's going to go. So it is something for you to look. First preserve, then accumulate. So touching on that point, to preserve your wealth and be as well off next year as you are this year, you should try and get return of income equal to at least inflation. As for the official records, the inflation is 5% in 2020. I don't know, cost of living is going up right now. My mom's saying the prices are going through the roof. So, I don't know, is it 5%, 10%? It can go up. So try and get a return at least as much as inflation, so you can buy the burger that you bought last year, this year, right? Then this is something Isuri mentioned, and I'm just touching on it, emergency fund, or some people say rainy day fund. Why is this important when you're investing? Is if you don't have this for those unknown situations, you will have to pull out money from your investment strategy and then it goes a mess, right? So just on that aspect. Debt strategy refinancing, again, she touched on it. These are some things I'm saying again because it's important. Again, Warren Buffett says, I seem to like to quote Warren Buffett today, he says, don't spend and then save, save and then spend. But Sri Lankans don't seem to be taking his advice so much. Generally, they borrow, spend, they're almost drowning to see how they can pay the banks. Is that a good strategy when you're in a pandemic situation and coming out? Probably not, because a lot of uncertainties, a lot of things are going up and down. So there might be a chance that suddenly you will just drown and not be able to pay because there's loss of income and all sorts of things. So good to review your debt strategy and then also look at refinancing. Isuri mentioned, I don't want to go into too much details. Refinance, basically see if you can, lower your interest cost and interest burden. Last but final least, I just want to mention diversification. Basically, don't put all your eggs in one basket when investing. Try and put them in different investments and not all money in one investment, so that if something goes bad, it won't be such a big hit for you. So diversification is key. I have mentioned a lot of different types of assets that you can invest and things to explore. So make sure you diversify. And with that, I've come to the end of my presentation. Thank you.